Hello and welcome to another edition of the Stench of Truth. I did a video earlier today on 420 to emphasize the need to legalize drugs, but there are some other very important things that have occurred on and around April 20th, and I'm just going to talk about a few of them. First, you have the Virginia Tech shooting, which happened on April 16th, 2007. You had the Columbine school massacre, which happened on 4/20/1999. You had the Oklahoma City bombing, which happened on 4/19/1995. And you had the end of the Waco siege and the killing of the Branch Davidians on 4/19/93. All within a couple days of each other. And according to the occultist calendar, a fire sacrifice is required on April 19th. And in fact, the latter half of April is identified as being significant for occultists. It has been said, I can't find direct confirmation of this. It has been said that April 20th is associated with the god Baal, the ancient pagan god Baal of the Canaanites, who also is in turn associated with Moloch, who you might remember as being something connected with the Bohemian Grove in the owl representation that they have there, the large owl that they have, which is a representation of Moloch. And of course, Moloch is also associated with money, but also Moloch is associated with fire. Both Baal and Moloch are associated with fire and with sacrifice. So it's highly probable that the occult feast day, which requires a fire sacrifice on April 19th, may in fact be associated with Baal or Moloch, or both, if they are in fact the same deity, or ancient pagan god. What am I getting to? Well, what I'm getting to is that these acts of murder and barbarity and bloodshed that have been committed in Virginia Tech and Columbine High and Waco and the Oklahoma City bombing, all occurring within a day or two of this particular event, and the fact that they all were very bloody carnages, makes me believe that the actions themselves were not necessarily just randomly placed where they're at. That they may have been orchestrated to occur on the particular days that they did in order to accomplish some occult agenda. And the people who are in power around the world, they do practice a form of occultism. And it seems to be a natural conclusion to come to that these same powers that be, because they do practice a form of occultism, that they would have public demonstrations of that because of their powerful position and the fact that they will never be held accountable for any of the things that they do. So in an effort to gain power, prestige, or favors from whatever it is that they worship, the occultists in power will orchestrate events in this fashion. But you have to remember, too, that nothing is wasted here. Nothing is wasted. What we have is a multi-pronged approach where they will have an occult agenda, but they will also have other agendas that can be used and that can be brought to bear. In the Oklahoma City bombing case, there was a plan at that time to enact something similar to the Patriot Act, which was scuttled. And of course, the Columbine school shooting and the Virginia Tech school shooting brought up the whole idea of guns and guns on campus, and a lot of other issues. But there are probably a lot of other things behind the scenes that we're not privy to, smaller laws, lesser things that the media does not promote, that were agendas that were driven by these particular actions. So what is it that I'm saying? Well, I'm saying that we do not have the official story on any of these things. All we have is a tissue of lies and misrepresentation, and we do not have the truth regarding what really happened in all of these cases. What we have is generally a whitewash which seeks to paint a picture for us of reality, which is in fact just a picture. It's not the reality of the events itself. In the Oklahoma City bombing, you have Timothy McVeigh and Terry Nichols, while the government conveniently denies that there ever was any John Doe number 2 or 3 or 4, and all of these other people that witnesses saw in association with the Ryder truck and the bombing itself. They deny, stonewall, and don't release any information on this, and claim that just Tim McVeigh and Terry Nichols did it. Same thing, Columbine. Witnesses there said that they could name shooters who were involved. They recognized them. But of course, none of these people were ever brought up on any charges or identified as shooters. Instead, we were told that 2 students, Dylan and Klebold, who just conveniently shot themselves or were sniped or whatever, they're the ones who did all the shooting and planted all the bombs, by the way, that nobody ever really talks about. Just getting access to the school and being able to do all of the things that they supposedly did just begs that they had to have accomplices. And in fact, early police reports say that there may have been up to 14 different shooters, and yet we're led to believe that it was only 2. Virginia Tech, again, this is very similar in tone and nature to Charles Whitman, which I think was a test run back in the 60s whenever you had this sort of mind control program in full swing. And Charles Whitman may have been a first off, a test case. And what you see with the Virginia Tech shooter is a more perfected form thereof. And again, with Waco, was a long siege, started in February, ended in April, but we do not have the actual true story here. And remember that in Waco you had everybody burnt to death by the government, okay? And in all the other cases you had the bloodshed associated with sacrifice, and in the case of Columbine you also had the addition of bombs, which would have added fire and blood, both associated with Baal and Moloch. So what's my contention is that these things are manufactured events, that they were done on purpose, or at least they were executed at the time they were in order to satisfy occult demands of the powers that be, in addition to, other agendas being followed, whether that be the enaction of new restrictions on people's freedoms or the adoptions of laws. Nothing is ever wasted by these people that perfected their art over the centuries, over the decades, over the millennia that they have been in power, because this is the same people that pass their knowledge down, whether it be through families, through relationships of other kinds, whatever. It's the same ruling elite, it always has been. And it does have a very strong occult connection. The reality of the occult connection is that they do get something out of it. They are in contact with something, whatever it is. It might call itself Baal or Moloch or something else. And I do believe that they get information. They get a certain measure of power. They are meant to feel superior and above other people. But of course this is just feeding into their psychopathic nature. So today is also a recognition day for the powers that be and their dedication to the occult and to a sinister power, an evil force, if you will. Some would call Baal, some would call Moloch, some would call by other names, but the fact remains that they are enthralled to an occultic force, an evil and sinister force, which requires blood, sacrifice, and fire in order to gain some benefit from this creature or entity or force or whatever you want to call it. And the elites are showing their hands whenever these things happen, because they all happen very close together in time on the calendar. Different years, but same time frame. And we could see this pattern in Son of Sam as well, with some proximity to pagan holidays. But in this particular case, we have things occurring in association with Baal and Moloch, ancient gods associated with fire and blood sacrifice. So this is a reality, people. This is a reality. This is what goes on behind the scenes, and none of this is wasted. So if they can satisfy a blood ritual and pass a new law that makes it harder for people to buy guns or whatever, they'll do it. They use these events for multiple purposes. You understand the reality of the occult forces behind the scenes here. It's very real, it's very true, and it's very fucking evil. It is bad for humans, you understand? It is bad for us because we are the targets of this, and we at any time could be part of some blood ritual or fire ritual in propitiation to this evil entity or force that these people acknowledge. So remember the dead, and remember the loss of life associated with this, and remember who the people responsible are. People acting in positions of power, whether they be governmental or shadowy elites behind the scenes. They're the ones. So take a moment to remember the dead who died on and around this day in bloody sacrifices and fiery deaths by occultist powers that be behind the scenes, acting through their proxy agents, whether in government or through some sort of mind control program. It's a very real phenomenon. Take a minute to just remember the sacrifices that came before, and think about doing something to prevent more in the future by exposing the sort of thing that we see. That is, that even on a regular everyday level, the sad reality of corporate greed and government corruption and all the other things that happen just as a matter of course, even without the idea of the occult angle. But realize that this is a very true phenomenon, very real, and this is something that needs to be exposed and talked about and understood as an evil driving force behind the people who are on top. Thank you. Good night.